Hi there, everyone, and welcome to this Premier Sports Network presentation entitled How to Run a Successful Elite Academy and Overcoming the Challenges. This one made possible by PSN's trusted partner for the last 4 years, the operating system for sports. You all know them. It is Teamworks. And welcome to everyone watching around the globe, wherever you are, Australia, Argentina, the US, the UK, in Europe as well. Welcome on board. It's great to have you with us. And I know there's plenty of people watching in various locations. So it's great to have your attention for around about the next 40 minutes or so. My name is Adam Leventhal, broadcaster and journalist for The Athletic in the UK and the US. And I've worked with PSN for many years, live in-person events and online events like this one as well. Let's get a quick introduction from our panel, and I'm going to pick you at random just to introduce yourself and give a little bit of background as to your role. Let's start with you, Haydn.
Hi, good to see you again, Adam. My name's Haydn Roberts. I was head of player care at Manchester City for 9 years, from 2008 onwards. Since then, I've stayed within the sports industry, and I'm currently the European sales director for Teamworks.
Brilliant. Haydn, thank you very much. Paul, let's head to you now.
Hi, everyone. My name's Paul Metheringham. I'm head of academy operations. I've been at Bristol City for just over a year. Previous experience at Lincoln City and Liverpool.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Paul. Abby, over to you.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, my name's Abby Carrington. I am currently the head of player care at Swansea City, and I've spent 4 years working in player care. Previous clubs were Nottingham Forest. Brilliant.
Abby, thank you very much. To Dave.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Wilks. I'm head of academy at Leicester Tigers. Been fortunate enough to be here for just finished my 7th season. So
great. And going strong as well, which is good. Let's head now to Patrick.
Afternoon, Adam. Very similar to Dave, actually. I'm academy manager at London Irish Rugby Club and just completing my 8th season in the role now.
Thank you very much. And let's head stateside. Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So Ryan Brooks, Senior Manager, Academy Business Operations. I've been with New York Red Bulls for the past 4 years. And before that, Minnesota United and Chicago Fire.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And finally, last but not least, Neil Hunter, who is spitting image of Teemu Pukki. Over to you.
Hopefully a little bit more hair than Teemu. Hi, Adam. I'm the head of operations at Norwich City. In contrast to Dave and Patrick, I've only been here, this is my end of my 1st season, previously teaching and in the travel industry before that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So that is your panel on this presentation. And just to let you know, we are going to be having a few questions that have been sent in from the partners of Premier Sports Network a little bit later on. So we'll get to those. But let's start off. We mentioned the title of this presentation, How to Run a Successful Elite Academy and Overcoming the Challenges. We'll come on to the challenges, but I wanted to start off with how to run a successful elite academy. I wanted to start with you, Haydn. Obviously, you were previously at Manchester City, and I'll ask the same question to all of our panel. What are the overarching principles? How do you get to the point where you feel, yes, this is going well, this is how I want it to run?
Oh, it's a great question, and in the role that I served in as head of player care, my role predominantly was the first team and then the emerging 21s that would transition from the academy. So in order for the academy to be the slick operation that it was all about communication and ensuring there weren't any silos, bridging those silos. So the transition, the pathway planning, whatever we'd call it, was smooth and consistent, because effectively you're going from one school to a much bigger school, and you didn't want to be that fish out of water. But also you wanted to ensure that the needs, not the wants, but the needs of the players and the stakeholders of those players were met. So I think the academy were exemplary in being able to communicate that to me, and therefore showing that aftercare even once the players had graduated from the academy. So for me, the one word I would use is communication and transparency. Two there, isn't it?
That's all right. That's good. They're both good ones. Dave, let's head off to you now, because into a different sport, but obviously there's a lot of shared principles, presumably, in how to run an academy.
I think Haydn's nailed it. Yeah. No, I think definitely that for me, probably a real overriding purpose. So every staff member, every parent has real alignment on the purpose of what the academy is there for. And with that, making sure that everyone in that system is cared for, so that it can be success even if people don't make it right to the senior team, that they are successful in their journey, they're successful for being part of the system, being part of the academy, and that we follow up on what we promise, that we want everybody to achieve right to the top of the game, but actually success is what they learn when they're with us, and be really honest and transparent about that. That's kind of what I think we've done very well, certainly at Leicester the last few years.
Let's switch to London Irish. Stay on the rugby side of things. Patrick, from your point of view, do you share those views that we've already heard there?
Yeah, very much aligned with that. We actually had a bit of a review about 12 months ago and based everything around the journey to the stadium. And that could be in any capacity. Obviously, there's 2 or 3 boys that you might sign each year, but I think it goes far beyond that. As everyone was saying here, you can develop lifelong lovers of the game, future supporters of the club. You want the parents to actually have enjoyed the process of their children having been in our pathway and had a fantastic experience, and they go on to come to our games in the future. If you've developed an interest in physiotherapy, strength and conditioning, nutrition through your years in the academy, high performance, and then boys go on to study that in the future and come back and work at the club in some capacity, there's so much that encompasses that. And I'm also very, very fortunate that we've had a consistent group of staff over a number of years, which has allowed the program to build and evolve. And I think that is also one of the keys to our success, but very much encompassing what the two guys have said earlier.
Abby, over to you. What are the keys to your success?
I think I'd probably go with direction. I think it has to come from a club-wide perspective. Obviously, as an academy, we sit under the club as an umbrella. So direction is key. We need to know where we're going, and then we can put things in place on how we get there. So having that almost true north, every stakeholder knows that that's our goal, overarching, and that's why we're making those decisions to get there.
Paul, let's head over to you. I mean, presumably it's a similar story for you, but it's difficult to achieve that sort of situation where everyone is heading in the same direction. That's one of the ultimate challenges of any sport team or franchise, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. Getting everyone on the same sort of page and working together is a real challenge. I think the guys have made some really good points so far. From our point of view, it would probably be ensuring that the best opportunities were available to the player, and most importantly, probably an enjoyable experience for them. So supporting them holistically and their development and sort of their personal growth of the players, but also probably ensuring there was a safe environment for all players and staff at that point. So looking on that side as well.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And we'll dig more into the, obviously into the safeguarding issues, especially important within academies in a little bit more detail later on. Let's head on to Ryan now in the States. The overarching principles at New York Red Bulls.
Yeah, it's when I heard the question, it's a successful academy. It's evolving, and we have a saying at the club. It's like 1% better every day, and so we're not even thinking we're successful. We're not even thinking of how we're continuing to build. And we actually, and I think someone mentioned it before, there was an audit at the club to see, how are things getting done right now, but then how do we want to drive in the future, and really looking at some of the key initiatives that will allow to drive that. And to really look introspectively in terms of a third party to say, this is things you need to improve on. For me, it's connecting dots, it's putting the subject matter experts and and helping and supporting those people. And I think someone mentioned it earlier with the silos of academy, second team, first team, and being able to smooth out the transition as much as possible. It's like I mentioned, it's a journey, and you're continuing to improve upon the processes each day. And so, yeah, it's an interesting journey, as I'm sure everybody on this panel can attest to.
And Neil, over to you now. How is it sort of at Norwich City? I mean, obviously a lot of it is dictated by maybe where the club is at, be it Premier League or be it the Championship at the moment. How much do you have to sort of just have laser focus on the job that you have at hand and almost ignore the external noise about, is the club heading in the right direction and all that sort of stuff?
I think it goes back to what Abby was talking about in terms of direction, is that the academy has got to have its own direction that works under the whole club strategy, as well as then what the first team are looking to achieve. I think I'd echo a number of the things that have already been said by everyone. The one thing that we always try and get across is that we want to create an environment that people want to be there. So that's all the stakeholders of the players, obviously the staff, the parents, but everyone is wanting to return every day, has that enthusiasm, energy to achieve whatever goals that they set themselves. We will try and give that opportunity and set them up on that journey. And
I may come into the second part of it now straight away with you, Neil, actually, in terms of the challenges that are faced by clubs and organizations, across the board in trying to achieve the goal of running a successful academy. Maybe let's start off with just the general challenges that you face. What is it that is sort of top of mind when you think, right, the biggest challenge for us is?
I think it's making sure that everyone is working in that same direction and working to a common goal. Haydn mentioned before about the communication aspect. That's where the Teamworks as a platform has really helped us be able to get everybody working to one platform, whereas obviously historically there's been many different platforms that have been used by different departments. And it makes that transition, it makes that the communication difficult. We obviously, as a club, geographically are challenged. So we have to reach further afield than perhaps a lot of other clubs that we compete against. So it's making sure that our communication with everything of logistics that obviously I look after off the field, but then obviously also regular feedback from all the coaching staff, performance staff, to make sure that parents and players know what's obviously expected of them, but also then are able to keep wanting to improve and looking to work to improve every day.
I think that's a great point, Neil, if I may jump in, Adam, and that one of the hardest roles that heads of academy have is delivering bad news. Almost, spoiling the dream. But as Patrick said earlier on, if you can create their own journey to the club and ensure that communication is not only joined up, but you're managing expectations. So you haven't got almost a game of he said, she said when it comes to letting the bad news out. And everyone's been consistent because you've got a body of evidence which isn't subjective. So people can then understand the process. And that way, you've got half a chance of the player's family leaving the building without resentment and talking well of their journey there and being grateful for such a platform. And as I said, like Patrick said earlier, that doesn't mean that the doors are closed in the club. There are new pathways that doesn't have to be the original one you set out to achieve.
Haydn, if I'm able to jump in, I think that's great points. It's the delivering bad news, but then it's getting ahead of it. It's getting ahead of the bad news, and we've all been in these positions for a number of years, so we can understand the patterns and we can understand the pitfalls. And when you have people that are, this isn't a single silo that you work. It's interrelated with a lot of different members of not just the academy but the broader club. And asking the right questions and seeing the patterns and kind of visualizing what can happen in the future based on a decision, or if they're seeking approval for, can I get more money for this product, or can I get this, can I get another part-time person, and thinking about, well, what are the negative consequences or the unintended consequences of those things, and looking at the positives, and maybe the positives outweigh the unintended consequences, and evaluating those things. I think that's the real essence of specifically what I do, and I can imagine the other people on this call as well.
Would anyone else like to come in on that point, which obviously branched out a little bit more, but in terms of delivering sometimes very difficult news?
Yeah, I think what everyone said is really right, and I think you have to be really honest with the player and the key stakeholders, making sure that the parents, the school coaches, etc., are in the room as well for those discussions, that whilst you want to create a really positive environment to ensure the athlete is confident when they're training, when they're playing, I think you have to be honest around, okay, this is where you're at, these are your strengths, but this is probably the disparity between you and someone we would consider signing in your position in 12, 18 months' time. However, we'll support you working on these areas of your game. But just as long as you're honest, so that it shouldn't really be a shock to anyone come the end of that season. So for us at the end of the under-18 program, if we sit down and deliver that news that, that we're not taking you on board full time, for us, it shouldn't ever be a shock. Those conversations should be managed over a period of time, and those honest, transparent work-ons be discussed.
With almost, Patrick, I don't know, evidence of that communication that you had 8 months ago, 18 months ago, just following up. So you're not in that space of, well, you said that back then, and she said that, and then, that wasn't communicated to me, and then it starts bubbling over.
Yeah, that's why we would always have the parents in the room, and then probably one of the school coaches either in the room or on the Zoom, so there's alignment from the various stakeholders.
I mean, in terms of, I just wanted to ask you, Haydn, on what Teamworks offers, for example, in terms of sort of record keeping and a pathway within an academy and on the communication side of things, to be able to check back and to be able to make sure that you can refer back to, well, this is the discussion that we had. Does that exist? Is that part of the offering almost?
Yeah, I mean, we can even boil it down to something simpler than that, Adam. Showing my age now, it was probably 10 or 12 years ago when there was lots of great information in different spaces, between the academy, between the first team. So there was loads of things going on, and there was loads of information, and no one knew where it was. And there was, we needed to find a better process. And at the time, the guys in performance analysis and the academy came up with a process, which was almost the beginning of this journey, which was having one platform to build everything. And then we realized, we needed to have more expertise in that space. So that's one of the big reasons I joined Teamworks, because it's something that I was asking for such a long time ago. And you can see how it solves those problems of evidence of communication, bridges of silos, communication between not just the academy and first team, but between different coaches from the academy, between the stadium, the academy, the parents, the schools, the education program. And I think really then that gives you that one body of evidence we talked about, all being in one place, to say, right, this has been your 5, 6, 7 year journey, and this is where it all sits. And here's the proof of that as one of the many things. And it's a lot. It's simple to do. If I can do it, it's it's really straightforward.
Abby, I wanted to come on to you, and we can maybe move the conversation on to different areas. What would you say is the biggest challenge that you face?
I think in both roles in player care, obviously very similar, but very same challenges of, number one for me would probably be time. So player care obviously came around a few years ago and was implemented into your academy program, but I don't think anyone factored in the time that it takes to actually deliver on player care. So you're already trying to put things into a jam-packed schedule, and now you've got to find time to do an extra department worth of stuff. So time is incredibly difficult to factor into player care.
And how do you manage that?
Build relationships, ensure that we're showing the value of what player care can offer. so that you get buy-in from staff and players to go, yeah, this is actually really worthwhile implementing and making space for in our programme.
Dave, I wanted to come to you, just the general overarching question of the biggest challenges that you face.
I think it's interesting to talk about player care, and we talk about it as a thing. I think we'd probably integrate it into a lot of what we do and how we message and how we deliver things, rather than be a standalone thing. I know there's the safeguarding and welfare and lots that come into that, but that's something that I think we would cover quite inherently. So we describe our environment as very, very high challenge but very high care. So make kind of no excuses about the demands we're going to ask of players and parents, but make sure that they're really well cared for. I hear your point around time. Time for me is also resource, and there's a constant balance for us, and I think a lot of sports around how much resource you can put into how many players, and obviously that comes really down to kind of really good player development and really good player care. Takes resource, takes time. So we're constantly having to, I suppose, agree how many players we can look after, how much input we can give them, how much care we can give them, how much development time we can give them, and unfortunately, we're, like you said before, we're kind of in the industry or the business of disappointing people at times, and you can't give as many people as much opportunity as you'd like. So that's probably one thing that over the last couple of years we've really had to balance out, is how much resource we can put into each player, knowing that you have to put a lot of time and investment into them because you have to care for them.
And Paul, I wanted to come to you as well. I mean, obviously, what Dave has said there in terms of caring for the people that are part of the academy is obviously essential. How do you do that, and how do you make sure that it is a seamless, prosperous environment at all times?
I think from what Dave sort of said there, the actual caring for the player is paramount in terms of what everyone does within the club. So we've got a really good group of staff who are very, very caring. So I think it's talking and keeping communication in a multidisciplinary sort of environment. So each member of each discipline will contribute to different player reviews, have constant communication, be continually updated on players and their situations, sort of on and off the pitch. So that kind of gives us sort of a bit of a wraparound care to each player at that point.
Neil, I wanted to come back to you now, if I may, and it sort of extends upon the challenges that you face. Are there any? You don't have to name names, obviously, but just in terms of case studies of situations where you thought, right, I'm facing this challenge, but I don't know, the processes that we have in place have made sure that we've dealt with that, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. We've dealt with it in the right way, and you can step away from it and go, good, we can roll that out any other time that we have this sort of situation arise again.
Yeah, as Paul says, as an MDT, it's that multidisciplinary approach. We have weekly meetings where we talk through each and every single player, and we would talk about them in each area, whether it be football, whether it be education, whether it be from a player care, welfare, safeguarding point of view. We would go through and really go into detail about that player. And I think it's really important to spend that time to make sure that we're giving them the best opportunity and best care we can. And we've had many situations with individual players where it links the different departments together, where a situation might have been described to a physio by a player, by one of the player's friends, however the information might come in, that's fed back to the group, and therefore the group can then go and deal with who's best placed to take the next action, to take the next step in order to help that player, and then that is regularly updated each week. So that's really worked for us in terms of getting everyone speaking and working together.
That's an amazing system you got there, Neil, to have that working, because from what I've seen, it's a dead easy thing to say, but to get it working when you've got the people, from the different departments, not betraying the trust of the player, and then not playing favourites by not releasing information to you, but still doing right by what's right for the player and what's right for the club, so everyone can move forward with it. Because that's brilliant.
Yeah. No, we've had lots of situations of where it can be very simple as learning about situations happened at a school, and being able to work that, whether it be family issues that might be going on, or whether it's directly related to performance on the pitch and how someone might be feeling low that week because they've had a particularly bad performance at the weekend, and therefore it helps each member of staff support that player for the rest of their time, and because they understand and know what's going on in their lives,
rather than finding out about it 3 weeks after.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, let's broaden that out to anyone else on the panel that maybe wants to jump in on that point. The key word that Neil said there for me is the detail, is making sure that you're on top of everything. How do you do that? I mean, Neil said there about the weekly meetings. I'm sure that is something that everyone else on the call has, but do you have different ways of doing that? Ryan, for example, how do you make sure that you're digging into the detail, be it on a sporting level, but a personal level as well, and parental level too?
Yeah, I think Neil talked about it. It was like information sharing. We have a weekly meeting. We have an operations meeting on Monday morning. We have an all academy staff meeting on Monday afternoon, and it really like sets up the week. And we have different agenda points where people and staff members could put in agenda points that they want to be talking about and subjects, and related to a few different areas. Because I think when you have everybody in the room, and I think that's why, and I'll go into teamworks in a second as well, but the worst thing that could possibly happen is to have one person tell one other person what's going on. It could be a big thing, small thing, in the middle, but there's so many people that are interdependent on that information, and unless that information is shared, then the athletic trainers don't know what's going on, the strength and conditioning coaches don't know what's going on, and it could be player movement, it could be issues at school, like you mentioned. I think so for Teamworks, we have different group chats for different subjects. So it's like player movement between first team, second team, and academy. That's a single channel, and then we have other channels for other specific type of things, and you only write in the information accordingly. So information for the correct people are in those groups, and making sure that everybody's diligent, which that always needs to be improved. And you always have conversations on the field and things, and it's really pushing everybody. If you have the information, send it, and like coaching people to that point. We had Teamworks in the academy. I think we're going on almost 4 years right now, and then it moved to the second team, and then it moved to the first team. And so we have so much more free flowing information where the most appropriate people know that information, and then they can do their jobs better. Because without that information, in terms of, and I'll bring up the player movement, without the information of how many minutes that player needs, do they need to take an off day depending on which team they're on, and the various sub departments are on that. Without that information, people are really going blind. But it's really staying diligent in that information sharing process, and it's like I mentioned before, it's a journey in that regard.
Patrick, if I can come to you, just in terms of how you make sure that there's clear delineation between the information that is shared and it's going into the right areas, and everyone is clear about the process. How do you achieve that?
Yeah, as was mentioned before, I think it's crucial to have a multidisciplinary approach to everything you do. And because of the various staffing roles, players have different relationships with each member of staff. So often physios or strength and conditioners, just because of the environment they're working in, often information gets shared there, as a player wouldn't maybe have a similar conversation with me or one of the coaching staff who's selecting a team. So listen, we try to do that once a week as well. There's definite challenges with that, staff availability, away games, people providing outreach to players in certain schools or different environments, players on loan. So it's really impressive to hear how well other people are doing it in other settings, and that's certainly something I would want to improve in our area. Certainly has its challenges, but it's vital. It's vital for sure.
And Abby, from your point of view, how do you achieve that as well in terms of the flow of information?
Yeah, I mean, Haydn and I have had conversations. We're not fortunate enough to have teamworks yet. We're going through a few different bits in terms of whether that's the right route for us, which hopefully is, but conversations are happening. But right now for us, it's everything goes through our ops department. So it's really important that they're central to everything. So what we do is we try and avoid silos of communication, instead have it go through that one central place, which basically our ops team are acting as our Teamworks platform at the moment, which may not be the best thing, but that's how we do it at the moment. And in terms of, information sharing, it's, again, as everyone said, it's our IDTs, it's making sure that whoever needs to know, specifically from our aspect of player care, safeguarding, welfare, there's some things obviously that have to remain confidential. So we don't necessarily gatekeep information, but we give the bits that are necessary and need to know, and then obviously keep certain aspects of that confidential.
I'm going to head into some of the questions that have been sent in from various partners connected to Premier Sports Network in a moment's time. But Haydn, I just wanted to give you just a quick shout in terms of, if you were to sum up, obviously Abby mentioned there, Swansea not necessarily working with Teamworks yet, but it might happen in the future. Some of you on the presentation are, some are not, and all that sort of stuff. And other people will have different solutions. But from your point of view, if you were to sum up, the key areas that you can help with, how would you do that in a succinct sort of 30-second or a minute? I know it's difficult. With your mic on though.
I've got 20 seconds now then. So I think in any professional sport now, there's increased risk, increased safeguarding, which means increased transparency is required.
That was very succinct. That was brilliant. That was more succinct than I would imagine. But obviously those are key, very serious priorities that you can help with Teamworks. Let's go through some of these questions that have been sent in. Dave, if I can come to you, how do you manage the communication between staff and parents?
Good question. A lot of it is channeled through myself or through our administrators. So we although there'll be a lot of sort of touchline conversations with parents and casual conversations, any formal conversation, any communication like that, we put through either an app or through myself. In terms of reviews and things, any review we do with the player, parents, guardians are fully welcome to attend, and we ask them to listen in rather than take part in. So that's the main sort of touch points of communication. We'd have more formal presentations with our kind of welfare staff and education staff with parents as well. But we kind of probably channel formal communication through one or two people, which certainly helps. Okay,
thank you, Dave. Another one that has come in is, and this is interesting. I mean, you mentioned apps there, obviously, even older people like me use apps. So it's not necessarily just the new generation, but the new generation communicates and act in a very different way compared to the old days. They want things easy and at their fingertips. How do you make sure that they're on top of all the things related to the club? Who wants to answer that one? Let's put that one to Paul.
Thanks for that one. That's a really interesting question there. So what we tend to do is we tend to use a lot through the communication network of Teamworks, which can give instant sort of notifications. So say, for example, you have the challenges of, unfortunately, we've got a beautiful training ground here, but we're also on a very training ground where there's a nice microclimate. So, for example, there's training being cancelled. We provide transport for players where sometimes that's cancelled. So it's getting out that information really, really quickly and really, really efficiently. So that one sort of stop shop to be able to have the communication out to players, out to parents really, really quickly prevents unnecessary travel and any further issues that you'd probably get from that.
Brilliant. Handled perfectly, Paul. Thank you very much indeed. Let me ask this one as well. I mean, we've had the question regarding staff and parents communication, but maybe expanding upon what Haydn was talking about, transparency and also keeping information safe and keeping minors safe as well. The personal information of minors is a big challenge, from phone numbers to passport details, and many more areas as well. How do you manage that and to make sure that your players are safe in various realms of life? How do you do it? Let's go to you, Neil.
Yeah, that's where Teamworks has really helped. In the past, say, messaging services, various different messaging services that are out there and used. We've brought it all sort of in-house onto Teamworks. So all communication is done so that when we message a player, their parents are also messaged at the same time, and it gives us a history of what communication has gone between staff and players. So that's one example. We store information regarding players, so contact details and various medical different information, where we're able to store on there and keep it so it's secure, but we're able to give access to certain members of staff, not give it to all members of staff that perhaps it's not necessary for. So we're able to control what levels of information people are able to see and receive. And again, as Abby mentioned before, that sort of generally always filters back to the operations team, as I'm sure Paul experiences. It kind of all does come back to that central point, to then go out to the various different departments, and that's where using that one platform has been really useful for us.
Ryan, if I can come to you, we've got time for maybe two more questions. This one has come in, and it is how to approach the mental and emotional well-being of players when running an academy. How do you arm yourself with the best tools?
Great topic, because this has been a big conversation lately at the club. This is probably the missing link that we don't have. We got here about 4 years ago. It was improving upon a variety of different initiatives, and for the player care part, the psychology, the emotional aspects of the players, that we take care of it to a certain degree right now, but it needs to be so much more amped up. We look at it from player disappointment and feeling they should be with they should be playing up a year, or they should be starting, or they're going through a bad stretch of games, or they live in a host family, and they're away from their guardians and their brothers and sisters. We do it right now from, we'll call it, I manage it, but we've probably got to a point where the operation is so big that we need not just one person, but we need multiple people in this arena. From a safeguarding standpoint, we feel really good. But from a performance standpoint and the pressures that the kids feel, I mean, they're teenagers and they're going through what a normal teenagers would go through. But then also you put them into an environment where they're trying to be professional soccer players, and it gets very difficult for the kids. And having people in place, which we really need to help and support, is really our next big initiative as to move this club forward.
And just a final question to everyone. I wanted to get everyone's take on, just to sort of look towards the future. There was a question about tips for people that wanted to be future leaders of academies and also in player care as well. A word from each of you, if you can, about the way forward, the direction of travel for academies in particular, and maybe the challenges that are on the horizon that you're already preparing for. Let me start, and I'll maybe end with you, Haydn, but let's start with Dave, if I may.
It's a big question. I think we've talked a lot about it. I think the player care piece is really important. I think I know a few people on the call. I think we'd all be pretty expert, but pretty good generalists as well. Having an understanding of that. I knew very little about player care, if I'm honest. A few years ago, I knew very little about psychology. But having an understanding of all the elements in your multidisciplinary team, having an understanding of the education systems, the stresses on young people, having an understanding of adolescent brains, adolescent physical development, you need a real generalist, for me, opinion on or understanding of lots and lots of different facets to be able to pull lots of different people and teams together. And doing it in a very productive way, that ultimately we're all here to produce and help develop talent, but also ultimately in a really caring way, so there's not the fallout from that.
Thank you, Dave. Patrick, to you, some things that you're feeling are going to become more and more important.
Yeah, well, I think leading on from what Dave said there, I think you've got to be invested in the person. I think everyone's very, very right about that, and you've got a staff who are genuinely passionate, in our case, around sort of player development and working in those age groups and supporting and challenging at the right times. But yeah, moving forward, I suppose it's hard to predict what's going to come next. Social media has obviously been a massive thing, and we spoke earlier around, well, how do you engage in team meetings? How do you communicate? All of that is changing and evolving. So for us, it's to try and stay ahead of the times, and I suppose having staff who are also very different characters to be able to engage with people on different levels is probably crucial moving forward. I can't predict what it will look like in the future, but I think we have to keep evolving. We can't keep doing what we've done over the last 5 or 6 years, because things move on, people move on, they think in a different way, they act in a different way. So it's about being able to engage on their level, and probably using experiences over the past number of years to try and help inform where we can improve that area moving forward.
Abby, over to you on that one, that hot potato of the future.
I mean, you asked there about top tips, so I'm going to go a bit of a different direction on probably challenges that people trying to get into player care will face. Is probably there's not a great deal out there at the minute for educational CPD on this before you actually get into the role and you kind of learn on the job. So I think that is going to be a challenge for individuals trying to get into the role. So I think to touch on what Dave said there, become a generalist, and you have to have so many strings to your bow in player care because there's so many components that make up the job. Just read, keep reading. When you think you've read enough, read some more. Read about people, read about sports, read about, the challenges that, previous, athletes have faced and things like that. And just try and get a real understanding of the ecosystem that you're going to, put yourself in.
Paul, to you, I guess that makes sense of having a rounded view.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the real key components of that is to probably get an understanding of the player before they come in, like from an insight form, to sort of like actually understand the player, get to know them as much as you can before they come on in. Having sort of multidisciplinary experienced staff, which have great experience in all different areas, which can contribute to the player's development. And then probably, as you said, a challenge for the future is understanding how the players have grown up, because for myself, unfortunately, I'm a bit older than these players, and I didn't grow up with a phone in my hand. I didn't grow up with all these social media and these apps and everything like that, and everything on an instant. They grew up with that, and that's only going to evolve coming in the future. So we need to be preparing for that and preparing for the future as best we can.
And Ryan, how do you do that?
Talking to the children, working with them, and understanding, I would say, getting to understand exactly their challenges. And working together with other organisations. And I think sharing good practice like this today is really, really helpful in understanding what other people do and learning from each other.
Paul, thank you. Ryan, how do you do that? Kicking off what Paul has said there.
Yeah, it's something that we do here at Red Bull. It's continuing to upskill and to put yourself into environments like, job shadow with different department and learning really what they're doing, their challenges, their solutions, what they're going through. And Abby was talking about it before of, have a genuine interest in learning more about like stuff you don't necessarily know about. And I think Paul was talking about, getting environments like this, for example, like coming here, I'm sure everybody is like this. If you came away with one nugget of information that's going to help you and alter your approach, and redo that over time, now all of a sudden those nuggets start to really look at, how you're operating. And I think for someone breaking into this industry, and a couple of people mentioned like generalist, and then when you're a generalist, you say, well, what am I truly great at? Well, you're good at all of those interdisciplinary subdepartments. And so when they're coming to you, you have an active knowledge of what's going on, but you also have a different view, which is interrelated with other departments. So I think it's being the glue. I think it's learning how to be indispensable. Like without this person, the everything would go haywire. And getting that niche of helping and supporting others, getting that information, being the glue, helping connect the dots. I think those assets are invaluable.
And Neil?
I think you can't go too far wrong if you always kind of have in the back of your head is what is the best interest of the player. And I think one of the challenges certainly that we face and what we're trying to solve is everyone wants more and more time of the player, and not forgetting that with a lot of them, they are still children. They still need to have their own lives. They need to experience some of what a child goes through. They need to be able to experience mistakes. They need to be able to experience choice and opportunity and those sorts of things. So it's kind of trying to make sure that as a group of staff, we don't expect more and more and more. And we do also have a perspective of what the actual player is going through and if it's in the best interest of them. And I think that's somewhere where you've got to, come back to a lot of the things that have been said is connecting people together and making sure that information is shared, so that people can understand a player, understand a child fully.
And Neil, leading into Haydn, that's a perfect way of doing it, connecting people together. That's what Teamworks does, isn't it?
Sorry, Adam. Yeah, 100%. Just before we get there, though, I was thinking in terms of getting people together and leading that change. Abby made a great point earlier, and whatever change you're trying to affect here is very labour intensive. So I think for me, the big thing that I wish I'd have learned earlier was how powerful it is to influence the influencer. So you're not necessarily chasing around after the player, but you're working in tandem with the biggest stakeholder in the player's life, which could be mum, dad, brother, all three, to make sure that you're on the same page and addressing the needs of that player going forward. But you're not always going to get that commitment. As we say, these are young men growing up. So to be able to influence the influencer, I think that's one game changer that will increase efficiencies, save time, and help you achieve more from the player care space. What was the other question, Adam? Sorry, you did tee me up. But
well, no, just in terms of summing up, the fact that Teamworks will ultimately help with all of those areas.
Yeah, I mean, it increases efficiencies, allows everyone to focus on what they do best, improves safeguarding, and really protects the club as well as protecting the player, and as I said before, it's a very simple system.
Haydn, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. To Paul, to Ryan, to Abby, to Neil, to Dave, to Patrick as well. Thank you so much for your insights. And you have been the influencers, because I'm sure many people watching at home will have taken on board a lot of what you've said. We really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for watching as well. And just to let you know, if you do want to discuss further any of the issues that have been raised in this presentation, do make sure that you get in touch with Premier Sports Network, and they'll be able to maybe link you up with the people that you see on your screen right now. Or if you just want to talk about future presentations or events, then do get in touch with the guys at PSN. Thank you very much and take care. Cheers.